one dinner time, was having a meal in the mess deck in D block. And the tannoy came over. Do you hear there? Do you hear there? Volunteers wanted for special duties. So I immediately thought, well, when he announced that it was preferable unmarried men, I thought, well, there must be something great. I'll get into this. It'll save me being drafted to a battleship or a cruiser. So I rushed down to the Master at Arms office, and I was first in the queue. And by the time he'd come to check us all, there was about 20 or 30 of us. Well, when he started at my end, he said to me, name, rank, number, what's your gunnery rate? I said, AA2. I'm sorry, mate. He said, we're what's the name now? We're concentrating on ACAC on the ships. He said, well, look, seeing that you volunteered and you're the first one down here, I'll put you down. I said, oh, thanks, Chief. So he put me down, and 2 days after, the tannoy again, and the names were read out, to report down to the Master at Arms office. We went down to the Master at Arms office, and we had to return all our equipment, alone bedding, gaiters and rifles and that, because they formed, at Wayline, they formed a bit of a naval brigade in the event of emergencies, drilling on the prairie with rifles and packs and gaiters, and they had 2 or 3 small field guns there. And returned all our medical report, doctors, dentists, and got our books stamped and everything. And next thing was that we were told that we'd be called the following day at 12 o'clock midday, report down here with your kit bags and hammock and everything, which we did. And we were transported down to Portsmouth. And amongst our lot was a couple of petty officers and leading seamen and that. And we asked him, what were you volunteered for? He said, it's an idea, mate. He says, I volunteered, but I don't know what I volunteered for. But he said, we've got to go up north. So we caught a train and we went up to Glasgow. When we got to Glasgow, the regulating transport people up there, we asked them, reported to them, and asked them what we were. He said, what number? Because we were given a number, 526 or whatever it was. And he said, no, mate. He said, I don't know what you volunteered for. And he said, you've got to go now to Gouroch. And you go across to Dunoon. So we got to Gouroch and went across to Dunoon. We got the other side of Dunoon. And no, I'm dropping out here. I'm missing out here. No, I'm missing out here. Because we went to Ardentinny, which was the Commander training base. What period was that?
It sounds to be like January 1943.
Yeah, 43, that's right, yes. Let's see where we were now. When we arrived at Dunoon, a lorry met us, and we said to the lorry driver, where are you taking us, mate? He said, I hadn't the faintest idea. He says, I've never been to this place where it is before. It's called Ardentinny. Never heard of it. He says, stone barracks, you know. So after winding through the mountains, we eventually arrived at Ardentinny, right on the seashore, a little bay off Fastness, the submarine base. And there were all these Nissen huts. There's an assault course there. And when we pulled up, we dropped the tailboard down, we all jumped out. An officer came bounding down the steps from one of the huts. And he had a khaki uniform on, wearing a green beret, and Royal Naval Commando flash on his shoulders. So we thought at first we were just a working party for this lot, you see. So our PO said to the what's name, oh, we told to report here, so any idea what we are, what we volunteered for? Oh yes, he said, you volunteered for the Royal Naval Commandos. But first of all, we've got to sort out the men from the boys, and then you'll go to Achnacarry, the slaughter schools they called them then. It's much tougher. Well, we've done a lot of training. We picked at Inverary, we picked all our khaki gear up, and mess cans, gaiters, and tins, steel helmet, and the rest of the army gear, and put our naval gear into the kit bag and sealed it up and put your name on a tag, and that was it. We were in the army, boots, gaiters, the lot. And we started our training on the assault course early in the morning and that, and well, the rest was documented. Then we transported to Achnacarry. After they sorted out the boys from the men. The rest was sent to Achnacarry to finish off our training up in Scotland. And we arrived at a little place, what's it called? A little station near Fort William. And the outside, we got all our gear off, small kit bags that we had then, and we made our way to the car park. And there was one lorry there, one army lorry, and a regimental sergeant major came across and said to us, where's your commanding officer? So we pointed to him, that's him over there. So he goes, of course, give a nice smart salute and said to the CO in charge, will you have your men put their luggage, please, onto the lorry, and then form your men up for marching. So the officer turned around and he said, well, where's the lorry for the men? Which you replied, there is no lorry for the men, you will march. And it was about a 5-mile march. Well, we marched down to the Achnacarry and into the campment, and our commando training started from there. And it's rather a long story, really, to go right through that. We beat the assault course by trickery. The Marines held it, and we beat their... the assault course, by the way, was a 5-mile job, not like they are today, about a couple of 100 yards in length. It was 5 miles across the Scottish mountains, and they had every obstacle they could possibly go, the arrows pointing the way, and you had to go, and it's very exhausting. Anyhow, we bit of trickery, we beat the Royal Marines. They never know how we done it, beat their time over the course.
What was the trickery? What trickery did you use?
Well, they sent it off in batches. You were so many to a batch, say 15 to a batch, and they were called A, and off they went. And the interval was given of 10 minutes. Then the next batch, which was B, was sent off. Well, we did, we changed over. And the PO said, right, when you come back, you're not A, you're B. You see, so the result was our time was very, very fast. And they wanted to know how we done. We told them after the war, I'm over a pint of beer at the nearest pub. We done it. However, the training there was quite, I remember every bit of the training there, and it was very, very funny at the time, but it's a rather long story.
Well, I think we've got the time, if you...
Well, if you've got the time, yes. We used to, in the mornings, we used to revalet, the bugle revalet, we used to get the morning and put on boots and gaiters and trousers, bare to the waist, towel, and your toilet bag, and we used to run down to the riverbank where there was tables with bits of mirror stuck on them and an enamel ball. And along the pathways, you only had to, on the path there were hurdles, and you had to jump these hurdles, and many of the two came a crop of dead on the hard cement paving. We got down to the tables, took the bowl, broke the ice on the water, took it up onto the table and shaved, clean shaved, then got back to the hut. And when we got back to the hut, the bugle went again for PT, and we still had trousers and gaiters and boots on. And we went down to the parade and we done PT with the telegraph poles, exercising and all that. Then we went back to the hut, dispersed, went back to the hut, put on a complete uniform, and then waiting for cooks at the galley. And before I go any further, the beds, what we had were 4 planks, wide wood, 4 boards, wide wood, supported by 4x4, piece of 4x4, and 3 blankets. And the pack, the large pack we used for a pillow. The bugle went for the cooks at the galley. We went down to the galley, still running all the time, over the hurdles, down to the galley, got into our mess hall, and we were sitting there and got all our porridge, which was one of the main course, porridge, no smoking allowed, nothing like that, no beer allowed, and bread, porridge, mugs of tea, or coffee, cocoa, and we were called to attention. We had to sit with arms folded, and the corporal on the end of each one of these tables stood to attention. An officer came in with a regimental sergeant major. And with the army, routine and discipline was different to Navy. And as they walked in, came along to the first table, which was army men on there. Any complaints? And the corporal would say, no sir, no complaints sir. Very well, we carried on the next one until he comes to the naval table. Now, in charge of our table was a corporal. He stood up. No complaints, sir. Two badger at the end of the table said, hold on a minute, cock. He says, hold on a minute, what do you mean no complaints?
Mr. Bromley, real free.
Came to the table with the corporal to stand up and say, no complaints, sir. And our chappie, two badger, what do you mean no complaint, mate? He says, there's hardly any bread on the table. So the poor old regimental sergeant major went red in the face, and the officer turned around him and says, see that there's more bread put on the table there, will you? Yes, sir. Went to the next table, and the same thing happened again. And the next table, which was 3 tables occupied by the naval commandos. However, that was one small incident. The others is the other training with the field training, observation, unarmed combat, skilling and killing, making traps for rabbits and animals, skinning animals, gutting them. All this was part of the training. When we finished the training at Achnacarry, we went back down to Plymouth and to a camp there, which was a holiday camp with little chalets. And the people who had organised the opening of the camp had sent to the wrens at Plymouth for 9 wrens to man the camp, cooking and etc. and that. And we were the first in there. As far as my knowledge is concerned, we were the first in the camp, and we had 4 to a chalet, and we had the tennis court. The what's name was taken all down, just the court which we used as a parade. And one morning, the petty officer came round the first morning. They were blowing his whistle, and right hands heave-o, heave-o, and so etc. And I said to him, "What are you blowing a whistle for, lads? Ledby, or it's Ledby, but we call him lads." Well, he said, "What? He said, I'm not going to shout." He said, "When the whistle do the job." I said, "You get me a bugle." I said, "I'll do it for you." He said, "You a bugler?" So I said, "Yes, I'm a bugler." Right. So he sent down to Plymouth, and they sent up a bugle. So I was the bugling there, rise and shine, sunset and last post, and one thing and the other, while the others was slugging their guts out, building an assault course just down the hill. Well, years later, I was to go back there, and I see the place, didn't recognise it. The only place I could recognise was the church for Sunday morning divisions. We went to church, but you couldn't recognise it now. But the officer's place is still down below now.
Did you have certain words that you sang to the bugle calls?
Oh, there was Charlie, Charlie, get out of bed, and that was saying, but I can't remember all the words now. It's years and years ago, and in fact, I've lots of bugle calls I've forgotten. I've still got a bugle in there, which I now and again I muffle up and do sunset and last post, but a lot of bugle calls I've forgotten years and years ago. But they were there were various rhymes to the there's the defaulters. There's the defaulters. Da 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 da. You can be defaulter as long as you like, but you only got yourself to blame. So these little ditties were put down to the bugle calls. There was more, but I've forgotten a lot of them. We done our training from there at Fort 3. It was called then Fort 3. Then we were moved up to Liverpool, and then we boarded the Glenurn and Glengarry, the assault ships. Still did not know where we went. We went ashore for exercise and various exercises ashore, and the place was swarming with CID men and MI5 and that, and to make sure that no contact was made with the civilians. And we had to march, a brisk march, and run at times, but these men were always around watching. And then we sailed for the south of Italy, and we didn't know then. We went out into the Atlantic and through Gib, and then onto Sicily. It wasn't until we were past Gib that we found out what the invasion was. It was the Sicily landings. So this is where actually we come into my period of time into the commandos.
Which commando did you belong to?
I was in N1 commando, well, N commando, N for nuts. And we were split up into 3 groups, N1, N2 and N3, so that you can take apart for this beach or park for another operational landing.
How many men would be in a commando?
Oh, I think about 100 or so. I have got what's written down in books. I've got it down in books, and exactly how many men there was, but I can't offhand. I can't really recall. But they were split into three parts: N1, N2, and N3, and we would operate at different beaches at different times. And then we would meet up again at one place. Well, we landed at Sicily. The morning we landed at Sicily, we were going in the LCAs. It was on Red Beach near Puccino. And as we were approaching the shoreline, some heavy shelling started guns were firing, and shells were falling all around us. Fortunately, none of the landing craft were hit, but we saw at the cruiser, I think it was a Fiji, I'm not sure, was firing, and we thought her shots were falling short. They were falling around us as they're falling inland. But it wasn't until later that we had to find out that the shots that were coming around us, the shells that were falling around us when we were ready to land, were coming from a howitzer battery just up on the hill. And the Fiji was firing at the howitzer battery, which she put out of action because the shelling stopped just as we touched the beach. And then the machine guns opened up on us from there. And Harrison called me because I was a machine gunner, you see. I was a Lewis machine gunner, being an AE2 rating. I was qualified to man a Lewis machine gun. And Russell sent back to Harris to go and fetch the machine gun. We've got a, what's the name, machine gun, Italian machine gun up here. It's pinning us down a bit. So I crawled up to where this Watson was coming from, and the vineyards. There was a sand dune, and there was these vineyards in lines, and I could see underneath where I was laying flat, I could see what appeared to be a small brick building by the side. It was a machine gun post. So I called up, and Harrison came on my right, my number 2 Doddy on my left, spotted it, and he directed me where he wanted it to fire. First of all was to fire at the door of the little brick building, give that a rake in, and then the pillbox, which was just on the right, so I could just see. You could see the machine gun swiveling round. In the meantime, they were doing an attack from the right and from the left, while we were engaging them from the front. They were going to attack from left and right. Well, we opened up and riddled the door, and then I saw the machine gun. I saw it move, and I opened up on that, silenced it, and then that was it. There was a lot of yelling at and thing, and the others joined in the melee, went into the machine gun post and the brick building, and there were some Italians in there. Some were wounded, and the people in the pit apparently were dead. I was given a ribbon by one of our chaps. He came back later on. He was detailed for burial, and they said, you know, if you shoot him, you want to bury him. But I mean, that was until war time. We buried him. But a good story comes from Lieutenant Russell, RCO. He was I've seen him twice. He lives up Ilfracombe up north, and he went in. He's got a story in the book, the Beachhead Commandos. He's written quite a few pages in there, and he apparently took what was left out. He apparently was supposed to move the coat, and a hand grenade fell out from the coat, and he caught it with his foot. You know, just bounced on his foot. It stopped from actually hitting the floor. He was quite a character, really. He was a Spitfire pilot, and he'd gone to the beaches of. He was called upon later on to go to the beaches of Anzio and photograph the beaches. A good job he did, because they found sand dunes there, and a sand dune could be anything at about 50 yards out from the beach. And then you drop into 6-foot water with all equipment on. So we went in by ducks. Instead of LCAs at Anzio. But he was quite a character. Later on, he was to prove himself at Ilfracombe, where a paratrooper went berserk with a knife, and he backed onto his car, and he grabbed him and gave a vital point and disarmed him, and got a recommendation from the Ilfracombe police for his bravery. That was RCO, Lieutenant Russell. He lost a leg later on at Anzio. However, we went up to the east coast, up to Catania and then up to Messina. And we landed across Messina, Reggio, and the searchlights, 3 searchlights were put into the air, and they were wavering above the sky. And we were told that when the 3 searchlights came together, the barrage would open up like it did at Alamein. This was Montgomery's idea. Well, we were sitting on the beach along lines, and the LCAs came in, and we trooped on board the LCAs and took up our positions. When we were all aboard, and we turned round and started to make for the coast, the Italian coast. These searchlights, we watched the searchlights, and all of a sudden they come together and stayed together. And the barrage opened up, and you hear the shells whistling over the top of the heads and that, towards the beaches on the opposite side. We were getting nearer to approximately about, say, 200 yards from the beach. And it was a calm, very, very calm. The water was calm, and as you know, any noise that you make carries across calm waters. And they had slowed down the LCAs, slowed them down so that the hum wouldn't be detected. And we were ready to land. And all of a sudden, the second wave behind us, because our bit was to take the beach and consolidate the beach, and the second wave behind the first line of entry was the Cameronians. And we just put about 100 yards from the beach, and the bagpipes started. God, did we curse them? The bagpipes wailing away, giving the position away, you know. Anyway, it was a quiet landing, nothing happened, and we landed quite safely on Reggio. And we made our way up. Some of them landed at Sapri, had quite a rough time there. No, not at Sapri, Salerno. But before Salerno, we landed at Sapri, just our unit N1, with Lieutenant Russell. And we landed at the place, and it was between the English and the German lines. And we apparently the chaps of the LCAs had landed us at the wrong beach. And we walked up the beach. There was no opposition at all, dead quiet. And we walked up the beach, pebbled beach, and came across the road, and nothing about, not a soul, not a sound, no life at all. So we accommodated one of the bungalows on the side of the road, and we took that, posted sentries and guards on the machine gun, waiting to see what's going to happen next. And the next thing was we heard a rumbling, and one chap's come running in there, one sentries, tanks coming up from down that way, see, from the south. So it's either Germans or us. We must be ahead of the German line or in between the two. And yeah, when the tanks came in sight, we spotted the tanks, you know, and recognised them. And the officer went out and waved his hands in the air, and the tank commander's head came out from the top of the tank and said, "Who the hell are you?" So he started roaring over commandos. Well, he said, "Where's the line?" He said, "Well, I think the German line must be up there, but they've landed us on the wrong beach." And he said, "They have. They've landed you between the British line and the German line." Anyhow, any action? No, nothing at all was happening. No scouting party from the Germans at all. Okay, and on they went, past us, and away they went on. And
is Sapri near to Reggio?
Sapri, it's a little coastline, a little place on the coast, a little bay, little tiny bay.
Is it near to Reggio?
Oh no. It's well from Reggio. We've bounced across. Up there, you come to Salerno. There's a Salerno landing, which we didn't participate in, but some of the others did. But this little place, Sapri, was before the Salerno landings. A little place called Sapri, which we were there.
So
but,
in September 1942.
Yeah, that's right. Well, later on we used to find out the sappers came, the army sappers came, and quite a lot of activity happening. Bren guns passed by, and the British lines moved up, and the sappers came to check the beach for mines, and brought a lot of these S mines up. And we said, well, we walked up there yesterday, and you know. He said, "You're lucky because the Germans had made a mistake. They laid it on the pebble beach. If it laid it on the sand beach, you would have been blown up." But the fact that they made a mistake and laid it on the pebble beach, and they picked about 6 of them up, 6 of mines, brought them up. So we got away with it again that time. And after that, the next landing, Sapri, was the a Salerno took place which we didn't take a part in. Some other units of the naval commandos landed at Salerno. But our next job was up to Naples. Oh no, we went back to, we went back to Alex, to Kabrit. That's right, we went back to Kabrit, which is a combined ops training centre down the Suez Canal. And I think again it was the Fiji that we, on New Year's Day, we came up back to Naples, to the port of Naples to embark on one of the LSDs for landing at Anzio. And from my section there, in the north of Anzio, by the flyover, I was the first to land from the duck, because they positioned me up in the front of the duck. In the front of the duck, there's two sides, the port and starboard side, which is flat, which you could lay down with a machine gun, and they put me up under the bow of the duck. We landed on Anzio, we jumped off, and no opposition, not to speak of yet. And result was that we come across a minefield, barbed wire, I think, so we had mine cutters with us, and we started to cut the wire because the second wave hadn't come in yet, the army wave hadn't come in yet, and we cut the wire, and they had landed the sappers at the wrong place, so we had no sappers. So what we done with part of our training was detect mines. So we took our fighting knives out, got in a long line, and started to probe the sand with our fighting knives until we came to these wooden boxes and lifted them out and that. We got halfway through when this first wave landed, and an officer come running up. He said, "What's the hold up?" We said, "No sappers here for the mines and that." He said, "I can't wait for that." He said, "Follow me, man." And so he went across. He got across all right, the gap that we had made. And the next chap that followed him stepped on the mine. And up he went. And I remember very well seeing his arm laying there in the minefield, which hadn't been cleared, and he had a tattoo on it, a tattoo on the arm. I remember seeing that. Well, I remember that. We had to kip down on the beach when the mines were cleared, and the trenches that we dug was quite near sea level, and the result was that you dug a foxhole, and the bottom was filled with water and all that, you know. I mean, or we had to lay on the beach on your greatcoats. That's the only protection we had at the time. Well, Anzio Harbour was to eventually fall, and we were shipped back to Anzio Harbour, in which we took over a house at Anzio, and of course there we were there quite some time, unloading ammunition barges and loading up the ducks and that and one thing and the other, and anything to do that they weren't doing, we done it because we trained in many aspects of the war, you know, the fighting that we were trained. And after a time, we'd been there for some time, they said, right, back to Naples. So we started to load the lorry up. With arms and ammunition, and I was coming up, I went down below in this house, because there at Anzio you had like a mountainside. You had the front door on the bottom street, the back door on the street above, because houses were built along the side of the house. And we were down below, and we had made an air raid shelter with sandbags underneath the marble stairs, and in event of an air attack. And Anzio Annie was on the go all the time. Well, first of all, it was a bit disturbing. Later on, you got used to it. One particular incident I remember before I go any further was Lieutenant Russell was going along, our CEO was going along the road, and there was a tall wall, keeping close to the wall. And these shells were coming over the time. You could hear them whistling all over the top of the time. And there was a chap there washing out his billy can in the sea with sand and that. And he had his legs apart, bending over. And all of a sudden, as Lieutenant Russell got level with him, and he was down the beach about 50 yards away, big spray of water shot up, engulfing the chappie who was washing out his machine. He turned round and they said, "Lieutenant Russell," he said, "that's a bloody stupid thing to do, isn't it? What did you do that for?" So Russell went out to him and he says to him, "What's wrong with the old chap? He's fooling around like that." And he said, "You're a very lucky man. Anzio Annie's shell has just gone right through your legs." And I said, "When the tide's out, you'll find it. It didn't explode. and he went straight through, and you see the track. We went through his legs. Poor chap turned white and passed out. So anyhow, that's one particular day, Lieutenant Russell. Well, we got orders to prepare to leave. We had 2 army lorries because we had no transport of our own at the time. And we were prepared to leave, and Lieutenant Russell was outside there, organised it, and we were coming up from below with a box of hand grenades. And there was about 4 of us. I know 1 or 2 of the chaps, Leading Seaman Lamb and Bomber Brown and Petty Officer Letby. And we were coming up. All of a sudden there was a top of the stairs and a blast which blew us over. And the hand grenades fell out of the boxes, started rolling down the stairs, which we were very concerned about, you know. We just cringed up against the wall, waiting for one to go off, but fortunately they didn't go off. The pins remained in the hand grenades. When we got to the top, the shell had landed right amongst them, all the lads, the lorries and that. And 2 minutes, and we would have been away. We would have been all over, we would have gone. But just that much time. And set the lorries on fire and one thing or other, and Lieutenant Russell got his leg blown off. I've seen him in the past years, twice at the Ilfracombe up in north there. And as a matter of fact, so the story goes, I don't know how true it is. I've often wanted to ask him, but it's a very delicate subject to ask him. Was it true that his leg was hanging on with a couple of sinews and he cut them off with his fighting knife and put his bandage around it? I often wonder, you know, how true that story was.
What approximately would have been the date of that?
The what?
The date of that.
The date that would do, Anzio.
When he lost his leg?
Yes, it would have been at Anzio. The date, I've got it in the book there, but I can't just offhand the date.
Was it long after you landed?
Oh yes, probably about 8 weeks, 9 weeks after we landed at Anzio. So we get the date of Anzio, where you can get the what's about 8
sounds like March.
Sure, probably around about March, yes. Yes, it would be probably about that. We went back to Naples, and there we got some new recruits to replace those that were killed and wounded, and we never saw John Russell anymore. And then from then, when Rome fell, it was the Adriatic side. We went past Monte Cassino on our way to the Adriatic to do landings up there. And we were told to stop and dig in as reinforcements for the attack, which was going to be taking place on Monte Cassino. We was there for about 2 hours when the Redcaps come along and told us to move on. It was no point in us staying, so we moved on to Fermo, or the other side of the Adriatic on time. Well, we went over to the Adriatic side there for operations there. And the first place I believe we went to was Fermo. Then we moved up from Fermo after a short stay there up to Ancona, and then from Ancona we went up to Porto St Giorgio. And in Porto St Giorgio wasn't really much activity there. We then proceeded up, always behind the front line as it advanced, ready to do a jump round behind the enemy lines, to a place called Pesaro. And there we cleared some mines from the harbour, switched on the generator. Well, we borrowed an army generator and laid a line around the harbour and brought up 3 mines from there. We was there a short period of time, and then we moved up to a place called Porto Cassini, near Rimini and Ravenna. And this little port, we had to do it up as though we were an invasion. The army brought a lot of rubber tanks and rubber lorries and that, and they bought, first of all, they bought a Brent gun carrier, and it went all around the sand dunes and everything, leaving tracks. Then when he had finished, the army came with the lorries, blew up these rubber tanks and guns and lorries and one thing and the other, laid them about the place, half camouflaged them, and this was supposed to fool the enemy that an invasion was going to take place from this particular port. Anyhow, it did fool the enemy because they brought some lines, some divisions from the inland, where the 8th Army was, to the coast. And the planes came over and we opened up on them. But, it was just a fooling. It did fool the enemy. Well, as we got, as the lines moved forward, nothing became that. We moved up to further up north. We were given 5 days leave because the war was coming to a close. And a friend of mine came up to me and said, would you like a trip down to Porto to Giorgio, where we were stationed previously? They got a NAFI canteen there. They opened up a canteen and they bed you down for the night, and that it's a service doing that. So I said, well, how are we going to get down there? Well, he said, I got a motorbike. You can be a pillion driver with that. He said, Jerry Maloney and Alf Seddon are going. I said, all right, I'll come with you. So off we went. We got about halfway down there, and the clutch cable went on the motorbike. So Jack, who was driving the motorbike, said to me, so I've got a pair of pliers in the back there. He says, when I clutch in, tell you to pull in the clutch, you pull it with the pliers, I'll clutch and then let go again, because the nipple had gone on the wire. So we done this, so we got down, we were passing an army camp, American army camp. So we said, look, we can get it repaired here. So we drove up to the gate, and the sentry said, what can I do for you, Limey? I said, we've got problems with the motorbike. Do you want nipple soldering that? He said, that's all right. He said, go across to the hangar there and see the sergeant. He'll fix it for you. So we went across to the hangar and saw the sergeant. That's all right, Limey. He said, leave a bike here. We'll do it for you. In the meantime, he called a corporal, of course, American corporal. Take these chaps along for a chow, he says. So the corporal took us along to the hut, and we had American food for the first time. And what food it was. Choice of all different things. We sat there talking to the Yank and that, and he said to the corporal who was with him, yeah, go to the so-and-so and get a couple of packets, will you? So they came back with a packet each for 4 of us with these American Camel cigarettes. And we thanked them, and we were on our way. We went down to the port of Giorgio. We stayed at the NAFI and 2 or 3 days. And then we started to make our way back home. And on our way back home, Alf Seddon's motorbike started to have trouble. So it was getting dark. It was about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And we came across a Polish bakery, and there was a light shining underneath the door. So Alf said, well, we'll ask him if we can wheel the motorbike in there to do the repair. So we knocked on the door, they opened it, and we spoke to this Polish chap who could speak English, and he said, yes, come inside. So we came inside, they gave us some bread rolls, and Alf repaired the motorbike, which we thought he had done thoroughly, but hadn't done so. Started on our journey, it broke down again. But the bike that I was on with Jack Sibley was okay. So the bike broke down, so Alf said, well, the only thing we can do, he says, you and Jerry Maloney look after the broken bike, and we'll go back to camp, get the 1500 weight, come back and pick up the broken bike, the bike that's broken down. So, okay, fair enough. Now, this would be about, getting 2:30 to 2 in the morning. Away they went on the good bike. Well, we sat by a haystack and we fell fast asleep. And it started to break dawn, and an Italian came along with his donkey and some wood on top. So I shouted out in Italian, "Che ore, amigo?" He said, "Alle sei mezzo," which is, what's the time, my friend? He said, 6:30. So I said to Jay, good Lord, where they got to? 6:30, it's only about 2.
Rear Bromley, rear 4.
So it was about 6:30 in the morning, and they came round the corner singing "Roll Out the Barrel." So I said to Mary Jack, what's happening? Well, he said, we got the 1500 out away from the camp, but he said, Alf fell asleep over the wheel, and it's in the ditch. I said, can't you get it out? He says, no, he said, you know, more help than that. So Alf said, well, I tell you what, he said, we better stay and look after the 1500 weight. Otherwise, you know, you'll have the tyres nicked off and everything. So he said, can you two make it back to camp? Hitchhike. So we hitchhiked. We got a lift with American, one of the big American transport. And the bloke was driving along with half a bottle of whiskey by the side, and the car was going all over the way, across the road, waltzing up and down the road. Anyhow, we eventually arrived at the turning which we had to get off, and which we were very, very grateful in getting off. And we started on our way back to Porto Cassini, when we sat down to rest, and we saw coming in the distance our way, a small little German amphibious car. As it got nearer, we noticed it was one of our officers in it. So we thumbed the lift and stopped and got in and got back to camp. And so when we got back to camp, I said to him, "Can I see you, sir? We've got a bit of a problem." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, we went out on motorbikes down to, what's the name, Porto, Georgia, and coming back," I said, broke down us, and they came back to camp, got on the good motorbike, got the 1500 weight, got that out, and went into the ditch. I said, "They're down the road there with the 1500 weight in the ditch and a broken motorbike." "Right," he said, "you're on report." So anyhow, I don't know how the end of the story, how they got it out, but anyhow, we were accused of it's going to be a court-martial job, because unknown to me, the two motorbikes had been nicked from the army signals, and they didn't know the motorbikes had gone. And I mean, I was the last one to be asked, so I mean, I was quite innocent really at the fact, but as I say, I was involved. However, that was dropped. That case was dropped. There was another incident. I think that was down at a little further south, Ancona, when they had a 2 or 3 days leave, and they laid on a lorry to go to Rome, and they were told that they'd have to catch the lorry back on the second day in the evening. Well, these two chaps missed the army lorry, which was to bring them back, and they did get back to the camp, but in General Alexander's staff car. Well, they were running short of petrol, and they had to call into this army petrol camp, and which they were served very, very quickly, because they saw the flags on the front and everything. And of course, the number of the car was taken. When they saw the flashes on the shoulders, naval commandos, they thought everything was genuine. Well, you got back to the camp, and they reported to the commanding officer, I forget who it was at the time, being that they had General Alexander's staff car. They got back because they missed the army lorry. And the CO said, "Well, I don't care what you do, I don't want to hear no more about it, get rid of it. And don't tell me where you get rid of it, just get rid of it." Well, they got rid of it. 2 days after, Jeep came into the campment with the red cap. I forget what they call him. I think they call him Marshal Red Cap, the chap in charge of the red caps, the big boy, and a couple of sergeants and a corporal. "Where's your CO?" So he pointed to the tent where he was, and he went across to him, and I think it was Wallace, I'm not quite sure. Came out and he said, "Yeah, a lot of saluting and that. What can I do for you?" He said, "Two of your men have stolen the Alexander staff car." He said, "What? They stole Alexander's staff car? Are you sure about that?" "Yes, we're certain about it." "Well, help yourself, search the camp." So they searched all the camp, they couldn't find it. Now, where we were situated there was a little jetty, side of a dockyard, and this stretch of water. And he was standing with his back to it when he was talking to the CO. And so our CO said to him, "Well, have you found it?" He said, "No, I haven't found it, it's not here." "All right, fair enough." And he walked off muttering about bloody commandos. Well, if he'd have turned round, he would have seen Alexander's staff car in 6 foot of water behind him in the dock. And it may be there to this day, I don't know. But that is the story going. It's a genuine story. It's
Porto San Giorgio?
Yes, down by Port St George, I think that's it. The actual date I can't really quote, but it will be the date I can't really quote. It slipped my memory at the time being, but that's an incident that did occur, and the two lads' names were mentioned, but I don't think no names, no pack drill. I don't know whether today they catch up on them or not for what they done during the war. I don't know.
I think that we've left out part of your experience, which was in Corsica and Sardinia.
Yes, I think. Yes,
1944.
I have. Yes, I'm sorry about that. And I've missed that piece out. I can't quite remember. It's off my mind at the present moment whether we came to Corsica or Sardinia from Anzio, or whether we came up from North Africa. I know we went back to North Africa at one time to Buji for a period of rest, but I just can't quote where we got there. But I and my number 2 on the machine gun, Petty Officer Letby, Leading Seaman Lamb, and Lieutenant Wallace, who's alive now, I met just recently at a reunion. We were sent to the island, which was on like a little peninsula sticking out, this lighthouse, and we had to man this lighthouse, and we were informed that to prevent any German landings at all. And not really much happened there. We'd done a bit of fishing with hand grenades, and we had to exercise with the SBS. They were doing exercises around, and we had to detect them coming around at night time and lay ambush for them, which we did, and was proved very successful. The others, part of the N Commander, were at the harbour, and Leading Seaman Gregory had a job of getting oil drums and sealing them airtight, and then joining each drum with about a foot of chain welded to stretch it across the harbour to give the impression to the Germans that the harbour was netted for submarines attack. But what the rest of the unit done in the harbour, I've got no recollection whatsoever, only just that bit that we had on the lighthouse. And I can't quite remember now, where I believe it was from there that we went back to North Africa, to Buji, a place called Buji, North Africa.
What about the disbanding of N Commander?
Oh, it wasn't until up at Porto Cassini, when the war was coming to close, the Italians capitulated. We went down to Rome, and in Rome we went down to Naples, and it's such a funny incident there. We was outside loading our gear into this hotel which we'd taken over as naval headquarters, and a lorry came by, 2 lorries came by and stopped, and in the back there were khaki clad figures with steel helmets on and arm flashes of Royal Navy and a seahorse. So when we asked the chaps, so what's this all about then, mate? Oh, he said, they got surplus Navy personnel are turned into army. He said they put us in the army for the time being. That's why we got the seahorse there to represent the Navy and that. So we didn't see any more of them, and from there we picked up another ship, a merchant ship, and made our way home back to Liverpool. And we came back to Liverpool. We went to a place called Dundonald. It was a combined operation camp which held RAF and Army, Navy, and what have you. And from there, a lot of them were demobbed, and the rest were disbanded. And I went for a Killick's course, passed the Killick's course, recommendation from a petty officer. And then I was drafted to 6 LSTs at Dunoon, which we knew very well, to look after them. And then shortly after that, I was recalled to Roseneath, sent down to Portsmouth, and eventually demobbed. And that's the end of my story.
That appears to be in November 1945.
That's right, yes. And
Roseneath is HMS Roseneath.
Roseneath, yes, HMS Roseneath, yes.